I'm shooting this video in May of 2022, and the news is that a lot of Indian startups have left go of their staff. By one report, about 5,700 employees across Indian startups have been asked to leave. Now, the difficult truth in business is that sometimes you have to let people go. But what's shockingly uninteresting is the fact that many of these startups have conducted these terminations in the worst possible manner. And I ran a LinkedIn poll to understand whether Indian startups were actually insensitive when it came to layoffs compared to their Western counterparts. You want to know what people had to say about that? And do you also want to know which is that one company or one startup that Indian startups can learn a lot of things from? So don't go away, watch the entire video. You'll get to know a playbook that is really interesting if you are a startup founder, CEO, or somebody who aspires to be a leader. So watch the video till the end. So there's an employee from Trell, which is a startup, anonymously said to Forbes India that he was asked to leave on a WhatsApp call. And till that time, he was actually said to be one of the better performers in his team. Imagine that. You've been appreciated for your performance and suddenly one fine day, the company asks you to leave. How would that feel? I mean, if I was him, I would feel terrible. So I don't want this to happen to anybody. But now this is something that's happening across startups. There are many startups which have asked their employees to leave. So Trell is just one of them. There's Unacademy, there's Vedantu, there is OK Credit, Furlenco, Meesho, so on and so forth. There's even better.com. All of these companies have let go of people, which raises a question about why do these companies actually go ahead and experiment or hire so many people in the first place. But secondly, about the way that they let their employees go. Now, if you look at a lot of these startup founders, of all of these companies, all of these startups, they really are vocal on social media. They take the blowhorn, and whenever there's a valuation news or funding news and all of that, they go gaga. But suddenly, when they're asking people to leave, they are completely silent. Absolutely no tweets, no LinkedIn messages, no blogs, nothing of that sort. And that, I think, makes things worse. Now, contrast this with a company called Airbnb. I'm sure you've already heard of it. But before that, I asked this question on LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn, about whether Indian startups were insensitive. And most people said yes, they are insensitive compared to their Western counterparts. Okay. Now, I'll tell you the story about Airbnb and how they managed layoffs in a way that no company ever has. Okay, so I'll tell you about that in the next segment. Back in 2020, when the pandemic had just arrived, Airbnb's Brian Chesky, the CEO and co-founder of the company, faced a very, very difficult situation. He had to ask 25% of the company's staff to go away or to, ask them to leave. It's a very, very difficult decision, considering the fact that Airbnb prides itself about like being a family of employees rather than just a company. So the interesting thing is that after Brian Chesky made the announcement, the weeks that followed, rather than getting negative publicity or negative PR, the company actually got a lot of positive chatter. Now, very interesting, right? A lot of people said that Airbnb has provided a new playbook for companies in crisis. Brian Chesky is one of the most compassionate and one of the best business leaders of our times. Why did this happen? So I came across a blog by Tim Denning, who's an Aussie blogger, and he wrote about what was interesting about the way Brian Chesky managed this particular announcement. And you should check out his blog. I will leave the link in the description, but he's also a very good blogger. You should look up his blog sometime. All right. On that note, why was Airbnb's announcement different from all other companies which asked people to leave? Number one, Brian Chesky said that we understand how important your laptop or your machine is when you're trying to find a new job. So we are going to let you keep your laptop. This was apart from, I think, 3 months severance pay, 1 year of medical insurance, etc., etc. Number two, he said that the HR team, the human resource team at Airbnb, 1/3 of them were going to work on making sure that these employees who were asked to leave would find their next gig or their next job. Okay, interesting, right? Recruiters for Airbnb turned recruiters for employees who were asked to leave. Number 3, Airbnb is a listings website of homes and spaces. They created another listings website, and this time the listing wasn't a home, this listing wasn't a house, it were the people or the employees who were asked to leave. So they created their profiles, wrote about their achievements, gathered feedback from their team members, etc., so that anyone or any company who wanted to hire them would be able to do so easily. So these 3 steps, among a few others, is what made the announcement of layoffs completely different. But there was one more thing that Brian Chesky did. What is that? The other thing Brian Chesky did really well was to write an honest and transparent and emotional letter to his employees, telling them that it was not their fault, that they were being asked to leave only because there was no option left, and nothing about their performance actually indicated or told them that they were the employees who should have been asked to leave. So the letter in itself, I think we'll put it on the screen when I'm speaking for you to figure out or to look at how interesting and how well worded the letter was. In fact, I will also leave the link to the letter in the description box. You should go and read it up carefully, because it's truly a masterclass in leadership communication or leadership storytelling. So all of these things meant that employees who were asked to leave also wrote positive things about Airbnb on LinkedIn. And closing the loop of positivity is that most employees who were asked to leave back in 2020 were absorbed by the company within 18 months. So all in all, it was a positive story and something that is completely out of turn, something that showcases emotion and honesty and also actions. Compared to that, contrast that with Indian startup founders. Like I said, most of them aren't even talking about having to let go of employees. Forget their emotions, even they are missing in the communication. So these announcements are being made on blogs, by company handles, etc., but none of the startup founders that I mentioned have spoken about how difficult or how what kind of decision it was, why did they have to take the decision, etc. So I think Indian startups can actually take a leaf out of Airbnb's book and learn how to deal with layoffs with grace and dignity. So I'm hoping that these lessons would be useful to any future startup founder. But before I let you go, I have 2 questions which I feel as an ecosystem we should all reflect on. Okay, so don't go away. What's the last part of the video? Yes, so that brings me to the concluding part of this video. Now, if you look at a lot of Indian startups, this hiring and firing is becoming a bit of a habit, right? Back in January of 2020, The Ken, which is a respected publication focused on startups, focused on business, spoke about the fact that that time, I think companies like Zomato, Rivigo, Paytm, Oyo, etc. had also let go of staff. And the reason for that was simple, that they hire when they want to scale up, and when they want to sustain themselves, they fire. So it's as simple as that. It's almost like treating people like numbers on an Excel sheet. And this is definitely becoming a habit with startup founders. So number 1 question, do Indian startups need to have that approach of growth at all costs? Or is there a measured, sustainable way in which they can grow? There are companies which have created an example of measurable, sustainable growth without even VC funding. So there's Zerodha, there is also Habit Strong by Rajan Singh, much smaller company, but I think Rajan is taking the right approach towards growth. That's my first question. We all need to reflect and ponder about that. And number 2, when you are asking people to leave, can you show a little empathy? Can you be slightly more dignified and slightly more graceful so that people realize that there was no other option with the startup founder, with the leader, but to let people go. And startups could do their best to let these employees go, as opposed to just letting them know on WhatsApp, Zoom calls, through emails, etc., etc. So that's something that I am hoping Indian startup ecosystem learns from Airbnb especially. And when that happens, I will smile a little more in my videos. That's it from me in this video. The StoryCo is a business storytelling coaching and training firm. If you'd like to know more about how to create stories, narrate them, and win in business, ask your questions in the comment section. Either I or one of my team members will answer you shortly. That's it